So I'm going to talk about the assignment a little bit, but also have an opportunity for you guys to ask me any questions that you might have. I don't think that whole thing takes that long. I brought some slides with me, but again, you know, probably we're done much earlier with that. Everybody okay with that? Yeah? Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a bit of a presentation. Let me do that, share my screen. There we go. And now you should be able to see some PowerPoints. Can you see that? Great. Okay, so as I said, you know, like the most important thing at this stage is just to stay calm. Don't worry about things, will be fine. Things are not that much different in this module. They are exactly the same. So stay calm, stay healthy, do what the government tells you and so on. And believe me that everybody at the university is working very hard to get this sort of to a good end. And then, I don't know, and then we see how we take that further. For the next semester, for those of you guys who stay with us, the thing is we actually don't really know yet how this is going to work. Depends a little bit on what the government decide, but then also what our president at UCD decides about how this will continue. Okay. So I hope that you got something out of this lecture, you know, that was interesting for you, watching the videos and doing the readings. Maybe for some of you doing the readings was a new thing. I don't know, but nevertheless, you know, I hope to show you the real stuff, the real text, because I think there's really no need to dumb it down. You know, you're adults, you should be able to learn these kind of things. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's a little hard, but that's just how it is. You know, that's the same thing for me too. So I hope you got something out of that. So now I want to talk to you about the procedure for this assignment, because obviously that's sort of like the big thing, and that has 80% of the overall grade that is still outstanding. So in terms of the procedures, you find the assignment online on Brightspace. Did you guys already find it? Yeah, people found it. People found it. That's good. You know, it's under. I don't know. I'll show you in a second where it is, but it's on Brightspace, and I've been posting this, so hopefully, I don't know, everybody got that. You know, like really just check the Brightspace page. I updated the landing page as well, where you also find instructions. So you are clever, guys. So you figure that out. Okay. So in terms of the procedures, complete the assignment, and I cannot stress it enough, complete all subtasks. So all 11 subtasks. You find in there 3 assignments. I ask you to do all 11 subtasks. Now that's the thing. And the total, I have that in the assignment as well. In total for the whole thing, for all 11 subtasks, I ask you to write around 1,500 words. Now that's like the thing. And the reason why I'm stressing it, because there's always some people that kind of miss it. You know, they only complete one assignment, but then I can't give you any points for it. And I want to give you points. You know, I want that everybody gets a good grade. In theory, everybody should score well on this in this module. But I can't give you any points if you only submit me a third or 2/3 of the assignment. That's the easiest way how you can lose points. Yeah? So just please complete all 11 subtasks in your own interest. When you complete that, you write that now in Word or wherever, whatever you want to do, I don't care. You save it as a Word file or as a PDF, and you write your student number and your name on it. Again, you know, if I cannot say that this is yours, I cannot give you points. You know, that's sort of as stupid as it is. But I need to know that this is actually yours. The third point is you submit the assignment via Brightspace assessment and an assignment, and here the deadline is the 18th of May, 2020. Okay, here you find this. This is like a Brightspace page. When you click on assessment and then under assignments, now you've all done, I don't know, most of you have done the quizzes. There you click assessment quiz. Now you click assessment assignment. And this is where you find this assignment. And when you click on this thing, then I don't know, there you actually go to the submission page and the first one, and to the other one that I highlighted in green, there you actually find the assignment again. It's like a Word document, but you also see it on Brightspace elsewhere where I posted it separately. It's the same thing. When you click on the final on this what I highlighted in red, like final assignment instead of exam, you end up in the submission page for this thing. And here you upload your file. There's a button add your file, and there you upload your file for this assignment. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Right? It's hopefully very straightforward. I know some of you have already done similar things, so that works, but it is pretty straightforward. Okay, the assignment itself, when you find it, it's a Word document. It has 3 pages with 3 assignments on it. Yeah, so can I stress it enough? 3 pages, 3 assignments, do all 3 of them. all 11 subtasks. Okay, yeah. So you cannot tell me I haven't told you. Yeah? So I really tell you, do all of these 11 subtasks. Yeah? And also for another reason that I'm going to talk about shortly is because this is also how I'm going to grade this kind of stuff. Now I see all the 11 subtasks, I have a category for each one of them, actually have a clear idea what I want to hear in each one of those, and then I give you points. And if you don't submit one of those, I can't give you points. Okay, so submit it all, because if you don't, you lose out. And also don't leave it to the last minute. Yeah? I know before I kind of had outlined the official deadline that you saw through assessments and exam logistic, complicated thing. It's 6 o'clock on the 18th of May. Internally, what I'm doing, I always know somebody is late. So I kind of put this at 11:59. After that, it disappears. Yeah, then it's gone. So don't leave it to the last minute. For some other reasons, right now you're well, I don't know, things are okay. It's like you don't know what comes up in other modules. You don't know what other assignments you have to do for other modules. So you have that right now. I saw 3 people already completed it and submitted it. I think that's great. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. So don't leave it to the last minute. Also, like technical problems, they might arise if everybody tries to submit at 1 minute before midnight. That I don't know. I don't want to be the IT help desk guy. But it should be fine. So submit it in time. Don't leave it to the last minute for your own sake. I don't have a slide about this, but as I mentioned, the word expectation is around 1,500 words for everything together. For the whole, if it's a little more, I don't know. I'm not going to penalize you if it's a little less. I don't know. Well, it should be at least 1,500. It's actually not that much. Actually, you can easily write much more about that. But I want you to get to the point and submit around that. Yeah. And also, I don't have a slide on here, but obviously, I don't know. I'm going to run plagiarism checks. These things happen automatically, actually. We use that software for that. But even after that, I tend to then dig into that a little in more detail, just to be on the safe side in a way, and just don't do that. That's I don't know. You shoot yourself in your own foot, and I'm going to fail you for it afterwards if that is kind of being detected, and there are whole lots of other consequences that you want to do. But the assignment is designed in such a way that you really need to think through things already anyway. Okay, so much about the procedure for the submission of the assignment. Do you guys have any questions about that? Yeah, just unmute yourself and say something. Yeah.
Is each section graded the same?
Yes, I come to that in a second. At the end of the day, internally, I give I have 80 points that you can gain for this assignment. I give 20 points for overall writing. And then I give 20 points each for each of the 3 assignments. Any other questions about the procedure so far? I jump a little more into the specifics of the assignment next. No? No questions? Everybody happy? Everybody happy. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the assignment. So what do you need to do? What do you need to do to do well? I don't know. In life, in the module, in this assignment. Let's talk about that. So what do you need to do? As I said, I give 80 points in total, 20 for overall writing and quality. That's really just, you need to write well as well, and I don't know, or just my general impression of the assignment that you give to me. But then I also give, for each one of the 3 assignments, 20 points. And these 20 points, they come about not in a random way. So actually, I have a very systematic way how I do that, so that because I want to be fair, so that everybody has the same chance. Because sometimes I don't know, you read something when you're in a good mood, or you read something in a bad mood. That's not a good idea. So I want to have everybody have the same chance. So I have like for myself a guideline. I don't share you that. Well, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But that's sort of what I kind of base on and what I'm looking for in these assignments. And at the end, this is now from I don't know, from another module that I had taught at some point. At the end, I'm going to produce something like that, really. And so you're going to get sub-scores for each of those 11 items. Yeah. So if you don't respond to one of those 11 items, you don't get any points for that, right? So that sort of really addressed these 11 points. Okay. And then there's these points, and they ultimately they translate into a letter grade, and you will see a letter grade on Brightspace or in Gradebook then afterwards. Now that's sort of what you get out of that. So as I said, like 20 points I gave for overall writing and style. That includes like, is this like good English? Is this sort of written well? How do you present things? But then also like how do you cite correctly? Yeah, when you use literature, do you kind of reference that correctly? Like in citations, or like direct citations to quotation marks and page numbers, or indirect citations where you refer to what somebody else has said in a way. So I'm going to factor these kind of things in as well as an overall impression that I get from you in the assignment. So let's talk a little more about the specifics of the assignment. Now, if you're fine with that. So now I'm going to give you a bit of an idea, not to say that this is everything, but so that you get an idea for what the hell am I looking at? Like, I don't know, if you have to approach this, what do you need to do, or what, I don't know, how am I thinking? Yeah, it always helps when you think about how am I thinking when I'm grading that in a way, but nevertheless, like this is sort of what my idea is of what I'm looking for. So in the first assignment, did you guys look at the assignment already? Yeah. Yeah. So the first assignment is about Johan Elster's hypothetical deductive model. We had a whole lecture about that. It's really about how do you make an explanation. Errors like this thing, okay, you have an explanation, you come up with alternatives, and then you think about, I don't know, different kinds of support. Like, I don't know, what else would have to be true, or alternatives, what else would have to be true if these alternatives are true, and that's sort of how we go about and explain something. Yeah? So this assignment is all about this lecture. So what are the things that I'm looking at? So the first part, your best possible explanation. First of all, I don't know, I want to know, is there a description of this puzzle? Yeah? You give me a puzzle, and is there a description of that? Do you give me a proper explanation? 1 point, 2 points, I don't know. Yeah? But then I also want to see, is there an understanding of explanans and explanandum? So that what is to be explained, and that's what I use to explain for it. And then also, is there a proper description of the explanation in such a way that the mechanism is clear in how you get from the one to the other? So this might sound trivial, but these are the kind of stuff that I look at. Like, not just give me a best possible explanation. Sometimes people just write, okay, 1 sentence. How am I going to give you points for that? You get some points for that, but you don't give me the explanation. So is there a description of this puzzle, right, that this explanation is about? And then also, is there a proper explanation, and do you make clear how you get from the one thing to the other? That we have like some cause and effect, like explanans and explanandum. So that's like the first thing as an example. So what is the next thing? There I say at least 2 alternative explanations. So what am I looking for here? Well, actually, do you give me 2 explanations? Believe it or not, sometimes people just give you 1 alternative explanation. So we have the points. I ask you to give me 2 alternative explanations. And then in the same way, do these alternative explanations make sense? And can they also explain the puzzle? Because if they don't make sense, you cannot explain the puzzle, they're not really alternative explanations. And then also, like, is there a proper description of how, again, for these alternative explanations, you come from the explanans to the explanando? Yeah? So the explanando is your puzzle that you actually want to explain, but now you have an alternative thing, an alternative explanans. Yeah? Do you describe how you get from the one to the other for these 2 alternatives? Yeah, does it make sense? Yeah. Okay. So what is then the next thing that I'm looking at? Discuss how one could obtain lateral support for your explanation. Does anybody remember what lateral support was? Yeah. Well, again, it's something we kind of talked about in the lecture. Look it up. It's really core. It's like really what this whole lecture is all about in some ways. Yeah. So what the reading is about. Lateral support was support from the side. That's what it's called, support from the side. What is support from the side? Support from the side is, I use this example of, I don't know, an explanation. Yeah, there you go, Elsa. An explanation receives lateral support if you can think of and then refute alternative explanations that also pass the minimal test. Yeah? So you support something, you have an explanation, and then you support something by kind of thinking of alternatives. Yeah, how else could you explain that? and then you kind of knock off these alternatives. And if you do that, that's lateral support. So you find, can you support an explanation by think and then refute alternative explanations? It's kind of an odd one. You kind of don't want to refute the original explanation. You want to refute the alternatives. That's sort of how it goes. And these alternatives, they need to meet the minimal test as well. And that's sort of like they are viable, they are valid alternative explanations. That means they make sense. Okay, so I had this example in the lecture that you have like, I don't know, more standing ovations in Broadway shows. That's the explanandum. And we used as an explanans, or Jon Elster did that, I just used this example, that there's an increase in ticket prices. And there was a mechanism saying, I don't know, if ticket prices go up, you have to pay a lot of money. So because of that, you think, well, that was an awesome show. It's a bit like you go to UCD, you pay an awful amount of money for your student fees. You think, wow, this is a really cool education that I get there. It's the same mechanism, cognitive dissonance. You tell yourself that this is worth it. So you have increased ticket prices that lead to more standing ovations. That's the explanation here. So now we thought about alternatives, right? And one alternative that I brought up was that maybe it is about a different audience. That kind of, maybe it's not that ticket prices went up, maybe it's just that different kind of people now go to Broadway shows, and different kind of people are easier to impress. So this is really just the explanation, the example that I used in the lecture, and you find exactly that example in Jon Elster's introduction text as well. So I'm really just referring to that. So that's now an alternative explanation. You see, that's a viable, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. There's a viable alternative explanation. But now we thought about, okay, if that alternative is true, what else would have to be true? If it is about a different audience, then it should also be that performances that happen somewhere else, physically, in the same performance goes on traveling around the country, that then there should be differences. You see, that should be true if it is about the different audience. If really the different audience explains more standing ovations, you should also find that you have different standing ovations when the same show travels around two different audiences. Or another explanation was that, okay, hang on, if it is about New York and I don't people from the Jersey Shore coming into town and watching Broadway shows, you should see a difference when, that's kind of like the kind of thing where it becomes really creative and very clever, I think, to study these kind of things. So then if you find days where, for whatever reason, that road was blocked, right, the bridge from Jersey to New York was blocked, then those people could not have traveled to those Broadway shows. Might not be the most perfect explanation, but that's kind of thinking, because then on days where that was the case, where the traffic was blocked, then you should see fewer standing ovations, because then only the New Yorkers were in the show. Not to say that this is the best explanation, but you see the logic of it. If you think of an alternative, but think about what else would have to be true if this alternative would be the explanation. So we're now like kind of 2 steps away from the original explanation. Then think about the alternative, and then think about what else would have to be true if this alternative would be true. And when we can find that these things are not true, what does that do? Well, it kind of really makes us think that, hang on, maybe this alternative explanation that we had is not that great to begin with, right? Because if we kind of really link, it is the case of a different audience, and then we don't find differences where we know for sure that there's a different audience as well, when the performances are in countryside or when the road is blocked or so on, and we don't find a difference here, then there's something fishy about our alternative explanation. So maybe our alternative explanation is not that great. This is how it goes. That's how I like providing lateral support. And then we can knock out this alternative explanation. And then, there's in the lecture, I talked about a similar way of doing this. Another alternative explanation is improved quality of the shows. And if that would be true, then you should also find that reviews are better. You should also find the shows run longer, if they actually did get better. And if you don't find this, that on general, the average scores of reviews got better, or if you don't find something that we can measure that shows run longer, again, it kind of might make us think that, hang on, this alternative explanation might not be the best one. Right? Okay. And then we can knock out this alternative explanation. And that's the lateral support for our best explanation. I hope this made sense. So, but look into this lecture again. There, I talk about that in detail, read the article by Jon Elster, and then apply that. So I want you guys to apply that. That's what I want to see. You come up with another explanation, and you know, you look at a puzzle, and a good social scientist, somebody once told me, like a good social scientist, you give them a phenomena, you know, something that you observe in the social world. I don't know, more standing ovations, and a good social scientist comes up with 3 explanations straight away. Yeah? Different explanations. That's sort of what you need to do. You need to think about different kind of ways. How could this have been brought about? And then the real world starts by teasing these explanations out from each other. Yeah? And that's what we try to achieve. That's what we try to do in the source. It's easy just to come up with one explanation. Everybody can do that. My grandma can do that. She can say something about this is, I don't know, connected to that, but is that's not scientific. You know? That's what comes when you kind of have alternative explanations, and then you use the whole background here is actually really falsifiability. Karl Popper, you know, we can never say that something is true, but we can refute something, you know, by we can say a statement is not true, and that's what we then try to do with our alternative explanations. We can never say that our main explanation is true. That's sort of like a really weird one, but we can refute the alternatives.
Do you want us to look things up? Do you want us to look up our refuting? Like, do you want data for as to why the alternative explanation is wrong?
Hang on, what I said, discuss how one could obtain data for support for your explanation. Well, actually, in this case, I don't really say, give me the evidence, you know, but I want you to think is like, how could I find that out, right? So, because finding that, this is what you would have to do in a paper. When you write a master's thesis or something else, you know, then you need to do that. Oh, that's true. Then you need to refute these kind of things. Why is the other thing? But oftentimes we do that based on literature. But here, I really just want you guys to think about that. I don't want you guys to look up statistics for when the roads were blocked from Jersey to New York or so on. Yeah, but just tell me, hang on, this is how you could do it. Yeah, that's what I want to hear. Okay. Okay. So this is a big part, but I thought I might talk a little bit about it so that you kind of get a little of the background. The last thing I have here is provide support from above based on literature. Again, support from above. What is support from above? Support from above is support that kind of where we kind of show where something, an explanation has been shown to hold in other contexts as well, right? It's like a theoretical support. And in the case of our relationship between standing ovations and increased ticket prices leads to more standing ovations. The support from above here is, well, hang on, there's something called cognitive dissonance theory, social psychology, you know, Leon Festinger. He kind of came up with that. It's been studied in other contexts, and it's exactly this idea that if you kind of, you know, have like two, I don't know, things that are mentally incongruent with each other, you try to make sense of it. Yeah? And for example, you pay a lot of money for something, I don't know, and then but you don't want to pay a lot of money, right? You kind of you make sense of it in a way by telling yourself that it was worth it. And that sort of like that genuine mechanism, that is cognitive dissonance. That's one thing, right? I'm not saying you use that. I don't know. You know, there could be all sorts of other things. You know, that where kind of. So now here I want you to dig a little into the literature, and again, don't go crazy. You know, this is sort of like, I don't know, a small part. You know, and the overall thing is 1,500 words for all 3 of them, right? But I want you to engage with it a little bit. Yeah, and also in other modules, you might have heard about other theories, not just cognitive dissonance theories, other things. I don't know, about how the world works. And here I don't really want you to, I don't know, to find the best possible explanation based on literature, right? But I want you guys to kind of make this connection between something else in the literature and think, hang on, this could actually make sense in this context here. And that is support from above. Yeah? When you find something in the literature and it makes sense for you in this context with your explanation. Okay, so is there engagement with the literature? That's what I want to see. Is there a more general theoretical argument that you make? Yeah? So not just, I don't know, don't stay at the level of the ticket prices. I want you to go one level higher, yeah? Abstract from that. Yeah? Is the theory clearly relevant? You know, is it not just a completely bonkers theory? You know, but again, I don't want you to find the best one anyway. You might not know that, but you know, I don't know. You cannot use something that is completely at odds and doesn't make sense at all. And also, is there a proper citation and referencing of this? Yeah? So this is where I want you to go beyond a little bit. Okay, so this is the first assignment. Yeah. Is this useful when I talk a little bit about what I want to see? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me continue and talk about the second assignment. So what is the second assignment? The second assignment is about this whole thing of the ecological fallacy. Yeah. Remember, this was a core theme in the lecture that we came back to so many times, and I think it's really, if you ask me what is the essence of sociology, I really think that is it. Yeah. So, I thought, I don't know, in my life, why am I doing this? And why am I, I studied other things before, and sometimes you ask yourself, and I think it's very important to be reflective about that. But one thing that I always come back to, and that always convinces me, is that in sociology, we really do look at these different levels. Yeah? So even if you know everything about individuals, that might not tell you why the society is the way it is, right? Or in the other way, when you look at the society as a whole, you go and you see segregation. We had a lot of lectures on segregation that I hope you guys watched. Yeah? When we see something like segregation or inequality, it doesn't necessarily mean that individuals are discriminated. Yeah? And this is very important. So we might see, for example, in the US, we see a lot of racial segregation, but that doesn't mean that everybody is a racist. Yeah? So in fact, it can even come about when people want to live in an integrated world. And that's sort of where it becomes really fascinating, I think. Once you understand that these two levels you cannot put them together directly. You need to think about how you get from the one to the other. Yeah? And this is where the interactions of individuals come into play. And then we have all these kind of social dynamics that play out. Like some people, I don't know, do something because others, and then others, and so on. And that sort of then follows from that. And that's sort of like at the core of that. And the ecological fallacy is more general, like look it up, I don't know, do some research around it. I talked about it. It's really about these different levels, and falsely drawing a conclusion about the individual level from the aggregate level. So I want you to find an example, and what do I want from there? Okay, so is there an understanding of what an ecological fallacy is? If you don't know what that is, I don't know, but that's not what I want. I want you guys to apply these kind of things. Yeah? So then I want you to apply that in a correct way to an example. And in this example, it's a bit like before when I asked you about the explanation, give me something that I can give you points for, describe that, describe this fallacy, and also make it clear to me why that is a fallacy. What is the mistake here? Yeah? Verbalize that. And always with these kind of things, be more explicit than less explicit. It's sort of like we cannot be explicit enough in the social sciences, and oftentimes you see that. Okay, so this is sort of like the first one. Find one other example for an ecological fallacy. Some people, I got an email at some point where somebody asked me, like, does it have to be a completely new one? Can this be from the literature and so on? Be my guest. Find one in the literature, find one somewhere else. But if you find it from somewhere else and you use a concrete example, then cite it correctly. That's sort of like the kind of thing. You don't need to reinvent the word here. So find one example that works, that is correct, and tell me why it is an ecological fallacy. Okay, the next question.
Is that the same from the last one for the example for your first assignment? Can that be from the literature as well then?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. In the first one, it's a puzzle, right? And there, it's not really about making a wrong conclusion from macro to the micro, right? Okay. Ecological fallacies where you observe something that. Remember the example that we had. Talk about this in the assignment, where you looked at admission rates at Berkeley, and it looked at women. I don't know, was it get admitted less? So I can't remember. Yeah, get admitted less. So there's discrimination against women. Yeah, but actually, it turned out no, it wasn't. Actually, they get admitted more. The reason why that was the case was because they applied to, at the time, departments that had lower admission rates to begin with. And you see, it's very easy to make this mistake, and you find this mistake all along, but you as a social scientist, you need to think about that, and you shouldn't make these mistakes anymore, especially after this lecture, after you realize, hey, there's this macro level and there's a micro level, and I always need to be careful about these kind of things. I cannot really always conflate them and say, okay, I observe something at the macro level, and then I kind of, just to give you an example, I'm just currently writing a paper, which is very exciting, about something in criminology. I have an interest. I study a little bit of criminology. It's about the age crime curve. It's about the relationship between, I don't know, how old people are and how much crime is committed at that age group. That's something that I'm looking at. And it's like a very characteristic pattern. You know, like at some point in teenager, people start to become criminal, and then there's a peak at early adulthood, late teenager years, and then it kind of really drops down again. And that's something we find all over the world, all ethnicities, all genders, all offenses. It's like a very universal pattern. Yeah, but it's sort of a macro pattern that we observe. And the criticism that I have to the literature is that people always assume that there's something happening about individuals. And we have the macro level pattern about how many people commit crime at a certain age. And then people kind of draw a conclusion from that kind of means that people who kind of have a certain age have a higher propensity to commit crime. But that's not true. And that's what the whole thing is about. That kind of is actually might not necessarily be linked like that. And in this case, so there's nothing that goes up and down. So in our case, actually we're using, and it's kind of funny because I've been working on this paper for over a year. We use disease diffusion models. So like models that folks use right now to study the outbreak of COVID-19, you know, and how it spreads and you know, how this curve goes and exactly these kind of things. So we use, I don't know, differential equation models to model this kind of curve. You know, it's nothing fancy. It's an epidemiological model, and it's a bit of math in it. But you know, it's a side note here. But we're using that to kind of show that, hang on, actually, social influence can create that pattern without needing something that the virus is suddenly, I don't know. You know, it's not that during the first days the virus spreads more. The characters of the virus, simplified, they are the same. Yeah? It's the people around it that change. It's the contact opportunities that change. So we cut off this contact opportunity, and then at some point the curve goes down again. So that's sort of what we're applying in this paper, basically. But that's a little side note. Yeah? So find me an example of an ecological fallacy and describe it to me. Yeah? And give me a bit of meat. Yeah? Give me something that I can give you points for. I'm always looking for something that I can give you points for. But if you don't give me something, I can't give you points for it. Okay, and the second point, describe in detail why it is problematic to draw conclusions about individuals from information about the population in your example. So here I want you to generalize a little bit, you know, like, so now I want you here is an understanding of implications from applying group level findings to individuals. That's sort of a little more general, you know, it's kind of, it conflates with a little bit of what the first one is. Are there examples of what such unintended implications might be? Yeah, so why is that a problem, basically? Then the last two parts of this assignment, I ask you, basically, I want you to I don't know, to make this mistake. Yeah? I want you to make this mistake and then correct that mistake. So the first one, I come up with a hypothetical newspaper headline. So there I'm looking for, does the wrong headline identify group levelization and wrongly applies it to the individual level? So do you make that mistake correctly? Yeah? That's what I'm asking, because that kind of shows me that you understood what the ecological fallacy is. Yeah? So basically, in your headline, do you take a group level association and imply something to the individual level in that headline? But then I also ask you is there a description of this? Yeah? Don't just give me the headline, give me another sentence, give me another two sentences in a way to describe that headline, or where you think that mistake is. And then, and the second one, I want you to correct it. So again, like, can you use the same thing, the same sort of wrong implication that you have here and kind of correct it? Does the wrong headline identify a group levelization, but correctly states that it cannot be applied to all individuals? So kind of, I don't know, uses the right word to kind of not make that easy mistake. And again, like, is there a description of this? Yeah, do you kind of tell me like where this is corrected now? Again, this doesn't have to be much, just one sentence, two sentences, but give me a little bit that I can work with here. Okay, so much about the second assignment. Any questions about this second assignment? No? Everybody happy? Okay, so let's go on and let me talk a little bit about the third assignment that I have. What is the third assignment? Third assignment is about the Matthew effect. Matthew effect is really, there are different names for it. We call it success with success. You know, that's sort of a little more specific application of it, sometimes called cumulative advantage. It's really this idea that, I don't know, you get even more because you already have so much, right? Like the rich get richer. That's sort of like this thing. Again, we had a whole lecture about this, whole lecture about the Matthew effect. So check out that lecture as your starting point for that. So I want you to come up with an example. Yeah, with an example that we didn't talk about so far. Give me an example. Describe that in detail. So what do I have here? Yeah. So is there a valid example of the Matthew effect, and is the example described? You know, again, when I kind of give these kind of things, give an example, always give me a little bit of more to work with on these kind of things. Yeah. So not just say, I don't know, one word or something like that, or 2 words. I can't give you points for that. Yeah? So is the example described that you choose? And then in the next part, do you outline clearly about how this Matthew effect comes about? There is the mechanism outlined how having something leads to getting even more. Yeah, like what are the dynamics here? You know, how can that actually happen? Yeah? Or what are sort of driving things? Why is that like that? And again, don't just say, I don't know, because they have a lot, they get even more. Yeah? Think about this example that we had with the sports stuff, yeah? Where we talked about young kids, I don't know, or the weird thing that most hockey players are born in the first 3 months of the year. Most professional NHL hockey players are born in the first 3 months of the year. It's really odd, right? But how does this come about? And then there's this whole explanation to it. You know, there's a clear mechanism that I outline. Like, okay, young kids at a young age, the difference really matters. Whether you are 5 years old or whether you're 5 years old and a half or 5 years and 3/4, then the 3/4 years or the half a year really makes a difference. Now you're bigger, you grew up. I see that with my nephew. The guy grows half a year, he's bigger. Yeah? So it really matters. And then you can say, okay, well, that means that at that age, because kids play within year cohorts together, yeah, calendar years, or I don't know, in this example of the hockey case, that really matters. So then the guy who is half a year older, or the guy who is like 11 months older than the other dude has an advantage, objective advantage. And the guy is bigger, is stronger, I don't know why. And that leads to that guy then shining, yeah, and looking more successful. And then the dynamic kicks in, where then you have, let's say, I don't know, then the guy shoots more goals. Then maybe the guy is being observed by scouts, yeah, because the scouts say, whoa, who's your best player? And they look at one team. They don't look at two, I don't know, the different age cohorts altogether. They look at one team, they look at one age cohort. They have to look at some cohort, at some group in a way. And then suddenly the guy who was born in January really sticks out. And then, you know, that individual, that kid might get more opportunities. I don't know, goes to special training camps, get selected for, I don't know, special teams or whatnot. And then that's sort of how the whole thing comes about. And then you have this thing that at the end of the day, you know, they are age 18. There's no physical difference anymore. I don't know, between somebody who's 18 years old and somebody who's 18 years and a half. You can't tell me that kind of has a physical difference anymore at that stage. But still, we find it that the most successful players are the ones that were born in January, for example. So that's what I want you to do. Describe in detail why that is the Matthew effect and how this comes about. Yeah? What is the mechanism behind that? And also, is this reasonable? So again, it doesn't need to be that I don't know, this is the perfect explanation. That's not what I want from you. I want to see that you kind of think that through. Right? I want to see that you kind of come up with a reasonable, yeah, it might be the case, but as I said, this is how the social sciences work. You tell me something, you give me one explanation, and then I say, yeah, but I don't know, it could also be this, it could also be that, it could also be that, it could also be that. That's how it goes. And then we kind of dig in, and then we kind of try to piece these things out. And that's sort of where the first assignment comes into play again. But give me sort of a reasonable mechanism and outline how your example comes about and is an example of the Matthew effect. Okay, then the last point, the 11th point, think about research design, similar to what we had in Van der Ruyt et al. 2014. Remember, that was this paper about, I don't know, where they did the experiments on Kickstarter, the paper on PNAS, where they gave people money project and looked at, does that make these projects more successful afterwards? And I'm not sure actually if I cited the right paper. There's also another Van der Ruyt paper, 2011 or 2009, but actually both are about success-based assessment. So Arnaud, actually a friend of mine, he kind of did some really interesting research on that, and both papers are published in PNAS, the Proceedings for National Academy of Sciences. And so there we had like 4, remember I talked about these experiments. I talked about these experiments in detail about what they did, you know, how they bestowed success on people artificially, and then kind of looked at, okay, does that make them even more successful? So here I want you, if you have like your example for Matthew effect, and you came up with a reasonable mechanism, you know, in the task before about how this comes about, you describe that. How could you go about and kind of study that? And this is where I always hope that you impress me, yeah? Because ultimately I want to then steal the idea from you and kind of study that. Well, I would take you on board. Actually that's what I do. I do research with students when something really well comes out of that. But kind of, we don't have, but I want you to think that, like also what I want to see here is make that connection between something that we find in the literature applied in a particular context, and then kind of think about, okay, how could I go about and find evidence for it? And that's all stuff you can't just find in the literature. This is where you need to think. And this is where you need to put the thing between your ears to work and kind of apply that. So it's not just copying, I don't know what others said, it's really thinking things through. And, doesn't have to be too much, you can just really say in a brief way how this research design should look like. So don't think you have to write like crazy amounts here, keep that in mind, it's all reasonable, but give me the essence of it. So do you have an experimental design? Because sometimes people just don't, they don't understand an experimental design, and then I can't give you points for it, because I explicitly ask you to tell me a research design that how we could study that. But then also, is it feasible? Could this be done? These are sort of such additional qualifiers that I then throw at it to see how good is your research design here. Okay, I think that's all I had to say about the assignments. Yeah. Do you have questions about this third assignment?
Yeah, no? Thomas, can I just ask, for the final part, does it need to be an experimental design, or could it be?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Could be another design as well. So I don't know. I used a lot of experimental designs that I guys wanted to introduce you to in the lecture, because I think these are fascinating. They're actually pretty cool in a way. But this doesn't have to be a research design. It doesn't have to be an experimental design. But it should be like how could you give me evidence for something like that? Because we can make, I don't know, as I said, we can make statements all day long. My grandma can make statements all day long. Yeah? But how do I know that it's true? Yeah? And this is where I don't know, the scientific thing comes into play. So either you build on what others have done, you cite that because they've done a study, right? Or you present me with evidence for it yourself. And that's sort of how it goes. Here, I don't want to present me that evidence, but I want to see like how could you go about finding that evidence? And that's what we call a research design. Yep.
Thomas, just another question. When you have the subheadings like you have there under assignment 3, when we're writing assignment 3, do you want us to keep those subheadings in, or do you want it to be kind of flow more naturally, just including those 3 points?
Oh, that's really up to you. Whatever. I don't care about whether you kind of have subheadings. Sometimes these structures can be overly structural as well, right? So I don't know. So don't overdo it. It really depends on how it flows in your case and what you're comfortable with. As long as you do give me something about these things. Sometimes students measure it all together, and then they brush over one of those questions that they don't really like. Yeah, that's not possible here. Because then you won't get points for it. So I don't know. Make it more natural if you think that kind of flows nicely in a way. The important thing is that you do cover these points at some points.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? So as I said, at the end of the day, I don't know, there are points for it, and I don't know, I have my long Excel sheet and all sorts of things just to save my ass about how this all goes, but also because I want to be fair towards everybody. At the end of the day, this translates into a letter grade, and here I'm just really using the scale that UCD uses. So at the end of the day, you're going to see a letter grade for this component, and it comes about, I don't know, from all of these 11 different subtasks that you guys get. Okay. I guess that's all what I wanted to say about the assignment, both the procedure and the specifics of it. So just an opportunity for you to ask me some more questions about the whole assignment procedure and so on. No, not really. Yeah, everything good. Great. That's always either a sign that I've done a good job or that I've done a horrible job. Yeah. One or the other. Either it was clear, or either it's just so confusing that you guys say, "Oh, I don't know. I don't even know what to ask." But I, just for the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to assume it is the first, that you guys kind of understood what this is about. Okay. So much about the assignment. Then for the assignment, I want to wish you good luck. Do you guys have any other questions about the module? It's a shame that we didn't have the interaction for the second part that I had hoped, but I hope that you kept up with the readings anyway. You know, I'll try to follow up on it, or maybe kind of look at some of the further readings if something that in there that really interests you. Okay, so that's the end of the thing. I wish you good luck, you know, with the assignments, not just with this assignment, but with all the other assignments. I know there's also the stuff, and every module does it differently in a way. And it's a mess. It's I don't know, but hopefully you'll be fine. You know, stay calm, do one thing after the other, follow the procedures, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be successful in this module. Okay. So that's from me. Have a good time, guys. Take care. I'm going to post this on Brightspace as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Thomas.
Bye.
Thank you.